going. So we recently released our short animated film called Nature Hates You. If you haven't seen it, check it out. The reason you should check it out before you watch this video is because we are going to do what is called a postmortem. After something is complete and released to the public, we'll have what is called a postmortem meeting. Discuss everything that went right and everything that went wrong, that we can kind of learn from any mistakes we made along the way while creating this. So, we won't make the same mistakes in whatever the next short we make is, as well as we can kind of double down on what we think really worked for us during the process of making this short film. We're going to have little categories we talk about, and in each category, each of us has to say two things. One, what worked, and two, what we would do differently in the future.
That's such a nice way of saying what didn't.
Yes, it is. First thing we want to talk about is the story.
I always loved the story. It had such a simple but weird little Dr. Seuss feel to it. That was probably the strongest for me.
The story's strengths are that it's very simple and it's gag-based. It's very short. It's a bit like a storybook, which, as you mentioned, I initially wrote it to be a storybook, to be a children's book. And then I was like, yeah, why don't I just make it into a little animated movie? What we would do differently with the story, I think the simplicity of a children's book doesn't necessarily translate exactly into a good short film, and I should have done more drafts. Additionally, I think the message of the short is a little muddled. The longer I lived with it, the more I realized that there was like a moral to the story almost, so I tried to kind of tack one onto the end, and I don't know that it worked. Also, I called it Nature Hates You because it's a funny title for something. I don't actually think Nature Hates You. I don't know if that's a great thing to call the short film, but it's evocative. So yeah, there's my story, what we would do differently.
No, I agree about the title.
Character, what worked. I think there are really cute ideas. I love the mother-daughter neighborhood dynamic of the characters.
I agree.
What would you do differently with the characters?
I don't know, it all goes back to, I think, our workflow.
What I would do differently with the characters is that there's no real development to speak of. Who they are at the beginning of the story is largely who they are at the end of the story. Yeah. And even if it's just something small that's realized or changed, and this ties into my issues I have with the overall theme or message of the story, is that it's just kind of told to the audience. It's not really something the characters realize or internalize, or not something that grows out of the story. It's just like, and here's the context. Now, in terms of the final aesthetic, what worked for you?
Everything mostly worked, especially the paper people and the contrast between the paper people and Natalia and her mom. What I would have loved to do differently. More work on the main two characters.
No, I agree. All the concept art and the concept key paintings we did, for the most part, I really like.
There's a couple shots that I did, and I'm not happy.
I think the aesthetic is too complicated for the story. I think for this simple idea, it shouldn't be full rendered CG. This is a very simple Dr. Seussian story. We probably could have done it all in 2D. Also, and this is just a little finishing thing, my computer monitor is not a true color monitor. It's just like a regular consumer grade monitor. It is not set up correctly. I think that the final viewed on other screens now is just a little too dark and a little too saturated, where on my screen, I was like, oh, okay, this looks good. So in the future, I want to get hardware attachments for computer screens. So next we're going to talk about the process of making the film. First thing we're going to jump into is pre-production. Now, pre-production is the script, it's concept art, it's everything you're getting together before you start really working on making the film real. Talk about what worked. I think we have a really smooth collaboration generally. I think we communicate very well, so I really appreciate that. I think we both banged out some really good first draft concepts and key art.
Yeah, I think some of our concept art was really on point and we really communicated well.
I like working with you.
Yeah,
it's clever.
It's good.
So what we would do differently with pre-production, we should have had so many more versions and looser sketches to start with.
Yeah.
We generally just kind of final first and second drafts. I, of course, as mentioned previously, I should have spent more time on the script. Basically, what you see is essentially the first version of my script for the children's book.
Yes, that. More versions. I think it still worked okay. Winston's just sitting on everything.
He's like, yes, I am the concept art now.
I think it worked okay. That's always the case, and we know this with our own jobs. Pre-production always needs to be a much longer process than it is. Because if that is all really well defined before the actual production process starts, the production process will go way smoother. Our time frame is always kind of difficult to determine because we do it between work.
Lot to juggle.
Yeah. So like if this was our main thing, the idea of a set amount of time per pre-production, production, post-production makes more sense. Right now it's kind of like, well, we'll see what happens.
Well, segueing into production itself, so the active working on the film portion, what do you think worked?
That's hard. Everything technological was Josh. So
we had some crippling problems, both in our personal life and when it came to executing things. And I'll get into those in what I would fix later. You know, any roadblock that I encountered, I was able to smoothly find a way around it and create something that, while it may not have lived up to my standards, it certainly exists and I was able to move forward. And when you're working and you have a deadline in mind, it's so important for you to just keep making progress. And I felt like even though I encountered some pretty big obstacles, I was able to do that. You worked out a killer production schedule, which I did not use. And I'm gonna get into that. So what I would do differently, I wouldn't ignore the killer production schedule. I would want to sit down with you and figure out exact dates for like, when should this phase be done? When should we be getting on this phase? And then you as production would kind of keep on track of that, as well as managing other artists, which may be you, right?
Right.
Additionally, the biggest thing I need to remember for the future is I am not an animation team. I'm not good at everything. I'm actually only good at a couple things, and I need to stop pretending that I can do everything myself. For example, one of the biggest problems I had was that I modeled all the environments, I modeled the characters, I modeled so many things that I didn't even end up using, because when it came to rigging, I tried to rig the characters as I have in the past. Like if you've seen Senescent and Brutal Kawaii, like I was able to rig those characters, and while they weren't great, I could animate them. They functioned at a base level, but for some reason Maya just ate my characters and they were locking up, they were crashing scenes. I was just having a heck of a time. So in desperation, I tried to learn a really terrible consumer level 2D animation package that ended up being far too limited for what I needed it for, and I kind of jury-rigged a solution using a compositing software, Nuke, to animate the 2D sprites of the characters, which is not ideal under any circumstance, but as I said, for every problem I encountered, I did find a solution. Not a good one, but it was a solution. It's absolutely heartbreaking to have these characters modeled and ready to go, and just because I'm too dead set on moving forward instead of asking for help or trying to get other people onto the project, it ended up not looking as good as it could.
We're such a small studio of two, not making any money.
Yeah, no budget. There's no budget on these
Bringing
things.
in more people, though that sounds great, not really as doable as we'd like, because you can't be like, it's one of those.
They'd have to be volunteers.
Right,
yeah.
Right, and that's fun.
That sucks. It sucks to put someone in that position, but at the same time, if I'm crazy enough to work on these things for free, maybe someone else will believe in it as well and work on it. But I can't pretend that they're ever going to see any money for it. We certainly haven't. So.
Yeah. We can push those deadlines a bit. And that's not something we'll always be able to do. In those moments when we actually have a little wiggle room, we need to take it. Especially if things are difficult.
Now, post-production.
I think the way we slowly kind of announced it, we announced it a while ago, but when we were creeping up to that time we were planning to launch it, I think we did that really well. We have some awesome friends that were sharing our posts and family, and that was great.
Yeah, that helps so much.
Yeah, for what we would do differently.
I think our biggest problem with post-production was that we didn't really get the views for this one that we got for Senescent or Brutal Kawaii, and I think a big factor has to do with the fact that our channel had been dormant for almost a year.
Yeah.
We've been posting occasionally, just occasional updates. When we were posting regularly, our regular video views were much higher on average. So when we were trying to get people excited for something we'd been working on for so long, no one really cared. Not that no one really cared, but not as many people really tuned in as they would have in the past.
Our audience wasn't as present.
Yes.
Understandably so.
All right, so next I want to talk about the team. And we'll start with your specialty, production. So what worked with production?
We were decently organized.
That helps.
You actually set it all up in the calendar. So I think that was really helpful and handy. What we would do differently, I agree. Following that little handy dandy schedule I made would have been nice.
True. Yeah. Yeah. And I'll let you handle the calendar stuff in the future, particularly if we're juggling more than just, me.
Right.
Next is me, direction. I found a rhythm for communicating with you because Katie was my primary voice actor who wasn't me. We didn't start there, but I think we got there.
Yeah.
And I think you also, through that process, gained a little bit of confidence as a voice performer as well.
Mm-hmm.
What would you do differently?
I felt too close to both of the characters that it still feels weird to me even now.
Well, and partly I think it's because we needed many more rounds of visual development on her to help inform her personality and her voice, and we never really got there.
Yeah.
So I feel like we were both kind of just taking shots in the dark with that one. But in terms of performance, I feel like I was able to get the emotion out of you that I wanted and the delivery out of you that I wanted. We just never really nailed down what that character was going to be.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Causes problems. My biggest regret with directing this particular thing is that I worked with one of your coworkers to do some potential voice work for us early on, and it wasn't what I had envisioned for the part. I felt like kind of bad not using the audio we recorded, so I think I need to be very clear with everyone I'm working with, like exactly how I'm going to be using what they're delivering. Additionally, in the future, I think we need some kind of audition process before we talk to anyone and be like, hey, do you want to be part of this thing when it comes to a performance? Because I felt like I didn't make that very clear, and I should have made that very clear. And for the final team portion, the art department, the artistic team.
Well, what really worked is the paper people. I want to see them in everything. I want to only make paper people related things until we die. I decided.
Okay. So we have at least a week.
Yeah, we're good.
I absolutely love how every single one of our shorts has a completely different look to it. I want to keep doing that. Like, I don't ever want to make something that looks exactly like something previous I made unless it's directly tied to that story, so it's got to fit into that world. And every story's visuals should reinforce the story, right?
What we should do
differently. The biggest thing for me in the art department is that I have not released a short that meets my standards artistically. It's impossible for me to, when I'm the one also filling every role along the way. I think the biggest thing I'm learning is that I can't keep making these things alone and expect them to look good. So part of my solution to that is I'm going to train you to do more. We need more volunteers. We need a team. I can't keep making these on my own, and I want them to look better. I want them to be better. I want to be able to focus on the story instead of just trying to kind of struggle to make it happen, right? And right now that's the struggle. The struggle is to make it happen. And I want to be at a place where the struggle can be like, can I move people? Like, can we make something visually that no one has seen before? Like, these are the struggles I want to be tackling, but I can't even get close to because I'm so busy just trying to make it happen. Overall, final thoughts, positive and negative.
I liked the simplicity of the story. I thought it was really cute, and I think we learned a lot, which is always great. I think it turned out pretty well.
Yeah, same. I can't wait to work on something new. At the same time, I need to remember that I have a tendency to overcomplicate the process and undercook the pre-production portion. And that should be flipped. We should be spending more time in pre-production getting everything completely perfect, and knowing for a fact that when we start production, we have the people and the tools, everything is in a perfect state to move forward.
That was our postmortem. Thank you for watching.
The corpse has been laid to rest. We will now
eat cake.
There. You will recover. She is encouraged.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for watching that video. If you liked what you saw, give us a like. If you didn't, don't.
Hi, I'm Josh Evans.